Join Twister Talk, where we share stories from those in the eye of the storm, covering the weather now and then. Twister Talk with Gary, Sue, and Brandon.
Tornadoes crossing the road right in front of us. It's tearing something apart right now. Big power flash. Shoot, I think a semi got flipped. Are you okay? This is great. Hey, there's big rail cover. We gotta go, sir. Hang in the car.
Gary, we're in Newcastle right now, and north of us, thing is still on the ground. There's lots of debris in the air right now. Lots.
You need to be below ground shelter.
I hate Oklahoma.
And it's a sunny September afternoon here, so it's kind of weird to talk about bad weather. But this is Twister Talk. I'm Gary.
I'm Sue.
And I'm Brandon.
And we're back again.
Yeah, it's beautiful out, isn't it?
It's great.
It's around a little bit above 80 and clear skies. And...
Is it nice in the weather bunker down there?
Yes, actually it is. It is as you described it. It is a sunny September afternoon.
There you go.
And our temperatures are we're in about the upper 70s.
You're actually cooler than we are. That's cool.
Well, you must be dancing in the street down there with the breaking that 90-degree weather. You're like, wow.
Yeah, really. Good heavens.
I've been looking at the forecast for the region, and it looks like we might be done with those 90 and 100-degree days for the year. And if that is the case, I am perfectly happy with
I can't imagine.
I think most people are.
I'll tell you, it's been a crazy hot summer, and it's been a crazy summer for all of us. But we are back, and we're going to take a look back today on the show at an historic event from 1990. What are we talking about? We're talking about one of the strongest tornadoes ever to occur in the state of Illinois.
And one of the strongest in August, I think.
In August, and definitely only the tri-state tornado. They say was actually stronger.
Really?
They go through parts of Illinois.
Wow.
So that's what we got. So
that's interesting because Illinois does get a decent number of tornadoes, but
this one did a number, and we're going to talk about that.
We're talking about the Plainfield tornado.
Yeah, Plainfield, Illinois tornado of August 28th, 1990. So, Sue, go ahead and. When you're ready, go and drop in the intro, and let's talk about this twister.
Between 3:15 and 3:45, this was Central Time, on August 28th, 1990, a violent F5 tornado tore through Kendall and Will counties, taking the lives of 29 people and injuring at least 350. The tornado left a 16.4-mile-long damage path, which ranged from 600 yards to half a mile in width. An estimated total of $160 million in damages occurred, with 470 homes destroyed and 1,000 damaged. And of course, 160 million, that would be quite a bit more in today's dollars, I would think. Very unusual tornado for several reasons. The first ever tornado greater than an F3 rating since records began in 1950 to occur during the month of August in the state of Illinois. The second killer tornado since 1950 to occur during the month of August in Illinois.
Right.
This particular tornado was surrounded by low clouds and rain. It was very difficult to see, and surprisingly, there are no known photographs or video. The other thing that's unusual about it, it approached from the northwest. Most tornadoes tend to track in from the southwest. So an interesting and kind of weird storm.
Yeah, that's remember seeing in a video, of the devastation and damage, and also talking about the fact it came from the northwest.
Yeah.
So a lot of people know, and low clouds and rain. No one knew it was coming in, and just like sometimes, sadly, about what happened in Joplin. A lot of people didn't know it was coming until it was right on their doorstep, and that's what happened in Plainfield. Not as many deaths, of course, but a lot of damage and a crazy weather situation. But Brandon, it's usually crazy weather situations that spawn these storms. So we'll let you get into some of that.
And the atmospheric conditions that spawn this deadly storm were fairly typical of those that lead to severe weather. You had an upper-level shortwave trough that was moving through the Great Lakes area. Below that, a cold front was forecast to push its way south through northern Illinois. These were the focusing mechanisms for severe weather. So, on August 27th, the National Severe Storm Forecast Center in Kansas City, Missouri, the precursor to what we now know as the Storm Prediction Center at Norman, Oklahoma, issued a severe weather outlook indicating a risk for severe storms in the Great Lakes region, including northern Illinois. And that happened for the following day. During the overnight hours into August 28th, an updated outlook continued to indicate a slight risk of severe thunderstorms in the area. And at 9:25 a.m. Central Time, The NSSFC upgraded their severe thunderstorm outlook for northern Illinois from slight risk to a moderate risk, now suggesting that there was a greater coverage of damaging storms. 1:28 p.m., the NSSFC issued a severe thunderstorm watch for portions of northern Illinois. After thunderstorms began to develop near the north central Illinois and Wisconsin border around noon, conditions increasingly began to favor supercells. CAPE, which we've covered before, values rose from 4,000 joules per kilogram across much of northern Illinois to a rather whopping 7,000 by 3 p.m.
That's insane. I've never even heard of a CAPE that high.
Yeah, very rarely.
We talk about basically any CAPE value above 1,000 to 1,500 indicates that the potential is there for storms to develop. That's the baseline. And we're used to hearing levels of 2,000 or even as high as 3,000 as being pretty insane, but this is 7,000.
Yeah, that's crazy. Good grief.
That would give those thunderstorms incredibly explosive energy. Now, the cold front could be seen almost exactly crossing the state border at this time, with the high values south representative of very warm temperatures in the mid to upper 90s and oppressive dew points reaching the upper 70s. Man. And those, especially who live in the southeastern U.S., tend to be pretty familiar with that kind of thing.
Yeah, boy,
yes,
the atmosphere was just juiced, though, wasn't it?
It was incredible.
Yes, it was. Despite the continued lack of pronounced low-level shear, the impressive parameters for supercell growth allowed an initial storm to very quickly produce one or two brief tornadoes near Pecatonica and Seward, Illinois. That's just west of Rockford, and that happened at 1:42 p.m. This occurred shortly after the Forecast Center issued a severe thunderstorm watch for that area at 1:28 p.m. As a dominant storm emerged later and ventured further into the extreme instability and strong shear, it blew up to a height of over 65,000 feet and displayed some pretty classic supercell behavior, including a hook echo and southeast movement to the right of the upper-level winds that would normally steer it. This motion brought the storm through DeKalb and Kane counties as it dealt strong winds in a swath of golf ball to tennis ball-sized hail. And also remember at this time that they had satellite images that were showing progressive development along these storm lines, which were causing them to become increasingly concerned about severity. Now, as the storm continued to build, a change in low-level winds was observed. Once generally northwest surface winds quickly backed into the southwest. With surface winds out of the southwest and the upper-level winds from the northwest, the change in wind direction allowed nearly 90 degrees of directional shear with height. That's more than necessary for rotating storms and for increasing the tornado threat.
Man, that's just nuts, isn't it?
It was crazy. A crazy day.
I didn't realize that this was so nuts.
Yeah, when you first see it, you realize the storm burst at 65,000 feet. It's Katie bar the door time.
Yeah.
There really are a few elements in this storm that are just like kaboom, kaboom, kaboom.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing after another. Well, and Gary, I think you've got some more on that.
Yeah, because that turning in the winds made an extremely unstable atmosphere even more crazy and unstable for the devastation it caused later in the day. That supercell first dropped 4 separate brief tornadoes in rural southern Kane County, Illinois. But after the attempt it was able to fully realize the wind shear, and guess what? A big tornado near Oswego in Kendall County, Illinois. Now, taking a look at the meteorological environment of that day, after looking back after the storms, it sheds light on ingredients that were at work. Strong upper-level winds and mid-level winds known as jet streaks were shifting southward, and their influence was quickly spreading over the area in the afternoon. The effective shear of 40-plus knots was sustained for supercell storm structure and, yes, tornadoes. So again, guys, basically everything was in play. You can, no matter how you shuffled the cards that day, it was going to come out tornado. Just the way it was. And unfortunately, again, the tornado being low clouds wrapped in rain, you're not seeing it. It's coming from a direction you don't normally get severe weather from. And then 29 people die and millions of dollars in damage, and lots of homes destroyed and businesses destroyed. I remember watching video of people after the tornado going through, and they're crying, they're sobbing. They didn't expect anything like that. We'll talk about some of that in just a moment, but I want to move on and talk about some of the eyewitness accounts because they're very touching.
Yes, in fact, Sue and I are both going to share some eyewitness accounts here because some of these are, they do provide a very personal insight into, the lives of the people who were affected by this storm. For example, Joyce Bellabradic says, I lifted Elisa and Becky through the hole that I had made in the debris that had come down on top of them. I remember thinking, we'll go get in the car and we'll go to Grandma's. It didn't occur to me that a couple of moments before, I had been looking through the area that used to be our garage. When I crawled through the hole, worked my way through the rubble to the living room, and saw the car sitting on the deck with the windows knocked out, I knew driving to Grandma's was out of the question. That almost kind of reminds me of that scene in Twister where Aunt Meg says she'll drive herself to the hospital, and one of the guys says, yeah, your car's in a tree around the corner.
I forgot about that, yeah.
Richard and Cynthia Brower. All that was predicted by the Weather Service was severe thunderstorms. Around 3:30, the storm hit. The babysitter's home, immediately after the tornado, looked as if it had been bulldozed off the foundation. Our 3 daughters were injured, Sarah critically. At 12:12 p.m. on Thursday, August 30th, Sarah was declared brain dead, and my husband and I had to make the hardest decision of our lives, and that was to disconnect our daughter from life support. The day Sarah was buried would have been her first dance class. She had been so excited about starting because her older sister, Stephanie, had been dancing for 2 years. Sarah was buried in her leotard and tights. And that just reminds you of the very intense and personal impacts that these storms can have on people.
Absolutely.
And now Julia and Marianne Homer. The next 10 seconds were a blur. Eyes and ears and mouths closed as tight as our car was tossed into the air. Safely secured in our seatbelts, we felt them pull taut as we rolled upside down and elevated toward the ceiling of the car. My sister quickly opened her eyes in the blender and saw a 2x4 fly through the car. The next thing I remember is sitting up and opening my eyes to find a world around me that I didn't know. The car had flown 2 blocks with my mom, sister, brother, and I in it, and landed facing the other direction on the other side of the street.
It's amazing they all survived that.
That is incredible because that car flew in the air, and a 2x4 went through the window.
Yeah, can you
imagine? And they all came out alive.
Went through the window and basically went all the way through the passenger cab in the car.
Oh my God!
So,
missed everybody, thank God.
That one really is amazing that they all survived.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple more here, and then Sue, you have a few to share as well. Robert Hill. As I approached the high school, I was stunned. It was turned upside down and was a pile of rubble. I looked for injured people, but saw very little human activity. It was like walking through an episode of One Step Beyond. I remember seeing a garden tool completely embedded through a tree. All the links of a chain-link fence were pushed to one end of the fence. That kind of reminds you of those stories you hear about soda straws being driven straight through 2x4s during tornadoes. It just, so many things here remind you of just how powerful these storms can be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Robert J. Persichetti. He was a Will County Sheriff's evidence technician. About 3/4 of the way through the autopsies, everything stopped. I called the psychologist over to the table. One of the deceased had a distinct smile on her face. I asked the forensic pathologist the reason the muscles would set in this manner. He said she was seeing a better place she was going to. She was a Catholic nun. Just to see the impact and just the things people take away from these experiences that they have. And these certainly aren't the only ones there. Sue, you have a few to share as well.
Yes, I do. Starting with Michael Ramirez. He says, my dad told us to wait in the basement because he had something to do. I thought he was out of his mind. I like that. What on earth did he have to do at a time like this? It turned out that as we were getting inside the house, he spotted 2 children literally being blown around. He ran back into the storm to try to help them. He grabbed the boy first, who looked to be about 4 years old at the time. While carrying him, he grabbed his older sister and dragged them both into the basement. That was perhaps the most courageous thing I have ever witnessed, and am incredibly proud when I think of my father at that moment.
Wow.
But I can imagine what was going through his head. He's like, where is he going?
Really?
But yeah, that's an act of incredible courage to walk out back into the storm to save 2 children I don't think he even knew.
Right.
Todd Borum was at True Value Hardware that day. He says, I fell on top of the pile of customers and employees who gathered in the back room and was able to see a little through the darkness. I saw the big overhead door about 15 feet from us bending and being pounded on by something outside. It was as if a monster was trying to get through the door. Then I saw sky above me. Ann Anderson said, I held on to the door jamb and saw everything flying around. I was knocked out and only awakened when my friend was calling my name over and over. She was yelling that the roof was going to cave in. I opened my eyes and told her to look up. The roof was gone. Lois Emerson says, we looked out across the parking lot and we couldn't believe our eyes. Some of the cars from the school's parking lot were lying in a nearby field and mine was completely gone. We later found it at the other end of the building, smashed. The subdivision across the street looked like someone had dropped a bomb. Trees were down, telephone poles were leaning over, electrical wires were dangling from trees, and houses were half standing or completely destroyed.
Wow. I want to give credit to the Plainfield Memorial group that put this together, and they gave us permission to read these, share these.
Yeah, those are some excellent eyewitness accounts.
I asked and checked, and they said that would be fine. So.
Good.
And we'll send them a copy of the show. So eyewitness testimony again, and we've heard, I remember when we did the shows on Xenia, we talked sometime about the eyewitness accounts in Xenia and also down in Gwynn, Alabama that night about what people saw and how they reacted. And it's amazing how these stories, incredible stories, sometimes just almost miraculous rescues or surviving these things, and they all tell basically the same story. The winds, they don't expect what happened to them. The winds go nuts and they're blown all around, and people are saying, what's going on? They look at their car's gone, their house is gone.
I'm kind of curious, was there any warning where the sirens sounded? The
sirens did sound.
Okay.
But again, because of the fact that the storm was so ferocious, it only sounded for about a minute, and the electricity went out and the sirens went down. And by then, it was too late. The tornado moved right over Plainfield.
I think that's a tornado that really has kind of doesn't have the notoriety that maybe it should have.
No, you're right. It doesn't, and that's a good point. It's not. There is a lot of information about it, but not as much you'd figure as some of the other information.
No.
Other storms, you get pages and pages of stuff.
The main reason I know about it is Tom Skilling, who
Yes.
is a retired meteorologist from WGN in Chicago, basically posts something on his Facebook page every year to remember this.
Right.
Otherwise, I don't know if I would have heard about it.
I remember hearing about it and seeing about it when the first time it happened, but then again, after years went by, I honestly at times can't remember anything about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes Skilling would do something on WGN, but there wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't until I believe this is now the 35th anniversary of the storm, and
that would have been 5 years. Yeah, 5 years ago. Yeah.
And so people are talking about it now and saying, here's what's going on, and we remember it. It did take several years to put together the memorial tribute on the Plainfield, Illinois website, so it only posted until I think it was 2010.
Yeah,
so,
which would have been 25 years, yeah.
Right, so they were doing that. So very strange situation about that in regards to the fact that it's a massive monster tornado. Maybe the fact that sometimes you think the death toll wasn't as big, that may have paid something into it. Still 29 people dying. But again, it's a small town, outside of Chicago, and may have gotten lost in the debris, so to speak. There are several.
Well, and also because there's no video.
Yeah, there's no video of the tornado. There's a video clip I saw years ago, something of dark clouds behind a building. That's all you saw. So there really wasn't a whole lot out there. So we're talking about this now. The thing was, the National Weather Service, the Storm Forecast Center, Storm Forecast Center later become the Storm Prediction Center, and the local offices kind of put their heads together after this and realized there were several mistakes that were made that probably should have been dealt with and have been since then. First of all, the fact is the FAA again was reporting pilots reporting severe conditions all through that part of the state. And the FAA was marking down, but guess what? They did not share it with the National Weather Service offices in Chicago.
Oh man, it's never good.
Yeah, that has happened before. That has been since taken care of now. There actually was a law passed that you had that opened the gates for both sides to share information. So the FAA knew something bad was happening, but were not releasing reports saying, "Oh, our pilots are running into this. This is what they're seeing. This is what we're seeing in local airports." Yada yada yada, and no one knew about it again. Again, the storm developed about noon on the Illinois-Wisconsin border, and produced nearly continuous severe weather, including large hail, strong and damaging winds, and several tornadoes as it moved southeastward across Illinois. Well, guess what? There wasn't a lot of information about that storm. The Chicago Weather Office was concerned about it, but they just said, well, it's just a severe thunderstorm, good chance of severe thunderstorms. Their forecast was not up to date. And the soundings in Marseille, Illinois, which is the local office downstream from them, did not relay the information they had to it for some other reason. I don't know what, because they said there were gaps. This is something that they were looking at the fact, and later testimony, they're talking to some of the interviewing some of the people there. Well, we knew it was severe weather. We did not know that tornadoes were going to occur because we're so focused on severe thunderstorms. Well, according to the standards of the time, Sue, that's what they were looking for: severe thunderstorms, multi-cell storms, squall lines with large hail, some damaging winds, but not aware of that. Yes, tornadoes could happen, but they weren't saying tornadoes are more of a possibility. Again, just reading them, this is kind of stunned by what I read. Again, the direction which the tornado came from, which is from the northwest to southeast, instead of normally southwest to northeast, caused some issues. In fact, again, the tornado was shrouded in low clouds and heavy rains that no one really saw it until basically it was on top of them. But the National Weather Service and the Storm Prediction Center, back then the Severe Storms Laboratory in Kansas City, saw some areas that needed to be addressed, and they did. And over the years, since that tornado, a lot of these issues have been directed and fixed. Now, a number of National Weather Service officers were involved in various aspects of that severe weather watch that day, warning and radar surveillance programs for the storm area on August 28th. Now, the problem was a lot of that was communication issues. The fact that there was only a severe thunderstorm watch when actually in hindsight they realized they should have issued a tornado watch for that area, because basically the parameters said at the time that severe thunderstorms, maybe with some tornadoes, were possible. Basically, it was going to be a strong wind and hail event. So that was one of the things they looked at and realizing, going back, they should have probably issued a tornado watch. However, again, you have to go with what the area entailed as far as weather conditions. Even though it had been upgraded to a moderate risk area, there are still factors the National Weather Service and the storm forecast laboratories in Kansas City felt they did not need to go with a tornado watch. Of course, by the time they realized they had missed that, it was too late. The other thing is the thunderstorms that produced the squall line and then the single supercell that produced the Plainfield tornado was isolated and away from the main event. Clouds were towering 65,000 feet, like we mentioned earlier. That would be cause for concern. Again, with a strong echo developing on that. The problem was the echo was visible from certain radar installations, but the National Weather Service office in Chicago, because of ground clutter surrounding Chicago, guess what? They couldn't see what the supercell was doing because the ground clutter was interfering with the radar returns. Remember, that was one of the old Doppler units. Now, the new Doppler ones out today can work out some of the ground clutter and don't see that anymore. That was one of the other issues. So, again, the basic thing was the watch should have been a tornado watch. They realized now, looking back, that's what they should have gone with. The other problem was communicating to media what was happening. Now, the Chicago stations immediately would broadcast anything on the air, but, again, severe thunderstorm watches and severe thunderstorms warnings are not considered by media outlets as serious as a tornado warning. So what happened? Most of the stations had a little crawl below, severe thunderstorm warning for these counties. Instead of interfering, coming up and saying, hey, tornado warning. And that was the issue. The storm was severe thunderstorm warned. It was not tornado warned. Something in the storm laboratory and the weather service offices in that area had to be aware of and realize that had to be corrected. It still can be hard sometimes in metropolitan areas to pinpoint a hook echo or a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado. It is better than it was back in 1990, but there's still gaps in the radar even today. The other thing is they realized they had to get a better media presence. In other words, the media was running the information, but with a severe thunderstorm warning, maybe just once or twice, and they just wait for it to expire and move on. A tornado warning is going to get more play on television and radio than a severe thunderstorm warning. That was something they worked out. And then they realized they had to also help people who were observing on the ground, like police, fire, emergency personnel, and even everyday storm spotters. They had to upgrade the training and really intensify reaching out to those people, making sure they were up to date, no matter what area of business they were in, up to date to what to look for in severe weather. So that's one of the things they really concentrated on getting done. And since 1990, that has definitely taken an uptick. We now know that many areas around the country, police, fire, emergency medical personnel are trained to look for certain aspects in the clouds that may signify a tornado event. But the fact is, every time there's a disaster like this, even if you go back to the outbreaks of 2011, the Dixie outbreak, even though it was a tragic day, we learn so much weather-wise about these storms. And every bit of knowledge just comes right in and helps. So that's what they learned from the findings and recommendations that came out from the Storms Laboratory after this after this tornado in Plainfield, Illinois. So that's what's happening there, and we've learned a lot, and we move on.
Gary, as you pointed out, the fact that the Weather Service, that they went back, they looked at this, they acknowledged where they fell short, and they took steps to fix it.
Right.
I think all of us, no matter where we sit in life or from which angle we view things, understand that that's kind of a rarity when it comes to, public agencies sometimes.
Yes,
so
it does happen sometimes.
That they were able to take those steps and keep the public informed.
Right.
As they took those steps. That is an example of the kind of transparency that I think we all want to see more of.
Well, the thing is, a tornado is not much remembered, actually signaled a lot of changes in the National Weather Service and how they issued warnings and watches and took care of things. Any closing thoughts, Sue?
Not any more than we've talked about. I mean, the one thing that's heartening about that is the fact that they did get their act together and shared the lessons learned, and really it's a bright spot in what was a terrible day. Yeah,
and the good that came out of that will never outweigh the bad, but definitely was positive steps in the right direction for that and dealing with severe weather outlooks and warnings. So today, the watches and warnings are very good, and we're usually on top of things when the local offices issue watches and warnings for us, and can't complain about that. So through tragedy, sometimes good things come. We know all the good stuff that came out of the super outbreak in 1974. Really, yes, a lot of people died, but it kicked forecasting in the rear end and really caused it to advance.
Yep.
Big time. So that's how we're looking at everything, and I guess that's it. And so for Twister Talk, I'm Gary.
I'm Sue.
I'm Brandon.
And we'll see you next time. Take care.